Colleen Pulaski, and I am from the Beeck Center for Social Impact and Innovation's Digital Service Network, and I'll be your moderator for this session. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to today's FormFest 2023 session that is titled Aotearoa, New Zealand's Form Builders Find the Sweet Spot. So this is a 1-hour session. Our speaker will present first, and then we will reserve the last 20 minutes for questions and answers from all of you. If you have a question during the presentation or the Q&A period, please use the chat box, and we will moderate the questions out loud so that the recording captures the question and answer. And if you haven't already, be sure to navigate in the chat box over to the session chat. Rather than sharing your question and answers in the main event chat. And if you need any, if you need any help with that, you can go to the help desk or just drop a note. So with all of that, let's get started. I'm going to turn the session over to Shelley Campbell, who is going to get us started by sharing their formative form story with us.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, ko Shelley Campbell tōku ingoa. Hello everyone, I'm Shelley Campbell all the way from way down south, Aotearoa, New Zealand. My formative form story, had to think a little bit about this one. And what I ended up coming up with was when I was pregnant with my second child, I was working for the Ministry for Business here in New Zealand, and I needed to apply for maternity leave. So I jumped on the system and started to try to fill out the form. But what happened was I didn't really fit into any of the categories that they had for people. And the result of that was I kind of felt very confused. I felt quite helpless. I started to research the ministry's policies. I ended up looking at some of the legislation. So due to my personal circumstances, I just kind of wasn't fitting into any of the particular boxes they had. So what I did was just completely procrastinate, stick my head in the sand until I was very pregnant, and it was pretty much too late. And at that point, I ended up talking to some actual humans in the human resources section who were really kind and reassured me and helped me find a way forward. But when I'm kind of doing this work that we do here in New Zealand around forms for businesses, I sometimes relate back to that experience, just that feeling of kind of disempowerment. Yeah. So I guess I'll kick off. Hello, as I said, I'm Shelley Campbell. I'm the product manager for FormBuilder and for Business Connect. And in my role as product manager, I set the direction for what the next right thing should be for our products, where we should take them, what we should be working on, and what's going to have the most impact. I'm really, really pleased to be here to talk to you today, and thank you so much for your time and attention and choosing to hear what we're doing in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm here to talk about Business Connect. I'm here to talk about how we've been trying to make things easier for businesses and deliver them great digital services. I've been with this initiative for about 4 years, so since just before it launched, and it's been really hard but rewarding work. So I'm really pleased to be able to share it with you today. I'll kick on. So just to introduce Business Connect, this is a platform that we created and launched in 2019 to help make it easier for businesses to deal with government. So we wanted to provide them somewhere they could come to apply for and manage the permits and registrations they need from across government, both local and central government, all in one place. We wanted them to be able to see all their transactions with government. We wanted them to be able to reuse their data that they've already supplied, to receive reminders and get progress updates. Mostly we wanted to provide them a more consistent user experience so that when they have to do the things they need to do each year, and a lot of those things are repetitive, when they come back to do them, it's a familiar UI, that it's not something they have to learn or relearn and have to interact with multiple different government systems. So we're trying to reduce that kind of mental burden on New Zealand businesses. So today I'm going to talk about, where we've come from, where we are now, and then where we're going. And I suppose importantly, I want to really recognize that our team has done some really great work over the past 4 years that I've been there. we've got some excellent results for businesses, and we've been able to move really quickly to support them. Some of my presentation today focuses more on where things didn't necessarily work out as we expected. Those things, offer a really great opportunity to learn and to recognize that we might need to change our approach. So I just want to say, we have done some good work, and I will be talking a little bit about that, but we've also found that maybe we were heading on the wrong path in some places and had to adjust. Just to orientate you, I am here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have a population of 5 million. So shout out to anyone on the session who is repping a small country or small town. I'm really interested to know where people are from. So if you want to let us know in the chat, that would be amazing. I'm also really interested in why people selected to come and hear about our form building experience. So please pop that in there if you'd like to share. So we are a country of small businesses. As it says here, around 550,000 small businesses in New Zealand. It's quite a high proportion, around 97% of all of our kind of companies and businesses are small businesses. And when we define that as having 20 employees or fewer, and they contribute over a quarter of our GDP. So, they provide lots of jobs and income all around the country, goods and services that keep our communities moving and thriving. And so it's really important that we support them. We want to make things as easy as possible, easy to start up a business, easy to flourish, and if they want to, easy to grow. Some research was done a long time ago now by the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research that found that it costs New Zealand businesses around $6.2 billion to deal with government every year. And it's likely that figure's only increased. So we came along and we wanted to do some work to support them and make it a bit easier. And so we based that on some research that we have that's a longitudinal study. And so it's been running for, I think, 9 years now. And it surveys 2,000 businesses every 6 months around their experience with government. And that's just very holistically. So this isn't run by one specific agency about, their business's experience with that agency. It's about their interactions with any kind of government organization. And what they found is that, what they continue to find every year is that businesses find the experience really confusing, quite fragmented, and our overall kind of customer satisfaction score is quite low. It's around sort of 50 to 55 out of 100. And the areas that we score particularly low in every time are consistency of service delivery and coordination between agencies and councils. And so what the team have found is that if we could lift those up, we would see an overall uplift in customer satisfaction for businesses dealing with government. So there we were a team ready to get going. I want to acknowledge that before 2019, there had already been a lot of work. The idea had been around since, I think, 2015 or 2016. So lots of people had done good work before that, but we were ready in 2019 to actually get going and do something. We were ready to stand up a system, a platform, and start to deliver something into the hands of New Zealand businesses. So what we got going with was, as I say, Business Connect, and what that comprised was a customer-facing platform, which looked like this. So we could gather a whole lot of services into one place and allow people to do more than one thing in one place. But what we also had was a back-end system that went along with that. So we had a case management portal, cloud-based case management portal. So what we allowed the offer to agencies and councils was we can digitize your service using a pattern that we had created that meant that no matter what service a business was interacting with, they would get a sort of familiar pattern of screens. But along with that, if they wanted, we could also offer them a case management portal that their team could log into and then receive that information from the customer. They were able in that case management portal to request further information, send an email. There were checklists that they could use for their own workflow. They could transfer the case from one person to another and do some basic reporting. So we wanted to kind of offer a package deal there. Obviously, the form without a way to kind of funnel the information isn't particularly useful for a service team in government. And we understand, you can receive stuff by email, but I guess we wanted to go that one step further and supply this. And this was of interest to agencies who, we were talking to. What we also do, I should be clear, is that we provide all of this fully funded. So we're fully centrally funded through the New Zealand Treasury. So we're able to offer this to agencies and councils without any cost to them. We're also able to offer it without them having to undertake any kind of procurement process. So it's quite attractive from that point of view. And saying all of that, just skip by this. So we stood up the platform in 2019. As you can see here, I've kind of highlighted on the left some of the challenges that businesses have, and on the right, some of what we wanted to give them. And we piloted with two very simple services. So we started with a food business registration through a small but lovely council, Manawatu District Council in New Zealand. And we also started with an importer service for New Zealand Customs. So, it was great to have some early adopters. It took a bit of work to get people on board. And so, we were really grateful to these organizations for taking a little bit of a risk. But in saying that, as I say, these services were quite low volume. And so therefore low risk. So it was something for us to play with and learn from. Now, what happened was we got those going, and then, as you can see here, we've kind of focused in on a cafe, and we know that cafes have quite a high compliance burden. In fact, hospitality businesses in general, they're a higher than average employer. Therefore, they've got quite a lot of compliance to do with government. So we knew that the impact we could make for hospitality businesses would be high. We ended up taking an approach where we wanted to deliver a lot of value to a particular part of the economy. And so we thought, right, let's cluster some hospitality services together so that when those businesses come onto the platform, there is more than one thing for them to do. And, that makes sense. And that's a great approach. I think that's that coming back to that kind of more end-to-end type of approach, so that you're not contributing to that fragmented experience of government, by offering one random service to a particular sector. But what it did do was it sort of reduced the frame of opportunity. It kind of narrowed our view a little bit. And it also meant that we ended up spending a lot of time working with local councils. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and they're incredibly important. We know that they appear in the top 4 of kind of government organisations that a business needs to deal with. But they do require, it's quite a lot of work. It was quite resource intensive to deal with them. We have 68 councils in New Zealand, and New Zealand only has, as I said, 5 million people. So it's a lot of councils, and they all do things just a little bit differently. And I'm sure that people with experience of local government on this session will have had a similar experience. It's nothing special. But what happened was that because alcohol licensing was what we tackled next, and because alcohol licensing is a devolved regulatory responsibility, we kind of ended up owning the service inadvertently. There wasn't kind of one organization, one kind of overseeing body that could own that. And so we ended up doing that. And I tell you, the people on my team could probably be liquor licensing inspectors, the amount they know about the legislation at that point. And so what we ended up with was a lot of account management, trying to onboard councils to this alcohol licensing and food business registration suite. We added another 2 hospitality services to that as well, which were for councils. It was really challenging to gain any kind of standardization. The legislation is incredibly complicated, and each council has kind of interpreted the requirements for gathering information a little bit differently. They all have their own bylaws. And so, as you can see by probably my facial expression, that the whole alcohol licensing piece was probably not the right thing at that time for us. we learned a lot, and we built some really good relationships with councils, but the amount of energy and resource and time that went into it was probably a little bit, well, it just meant that we couldn't take opportunities elsewhere, I suppose. The other thing with the councils that adopted Business Connect and continue to is they tend to be the smaller councils. They have less resources. So for them, Business Connect being fully funded and offering this kind of thing was something that they might not be able to have otherwise. So that brought kind of lower volumes with it. And a high level of customization going into the forms. So yeah, that's where we were. We were learning a lot. There's no doubt about it. And we were definitely helping businesses because, as I say, this is a complex process, and the way that we have created it on our platform really steps them through and makes it easier. But yeah, it was a lot of work and a lot of focus in one specific area. Then, of course, we ended up having to drop all of that to support the COVID response. So, COVID was really hard, really, really awful for Business Connect. As I say, we had to drop everything and respond. And the way that we supported was with a number of services, 2 or 3 services. One in particular was kind of our highest impact, which was around people needing to travel across alert level boundaries. I'm really sorry if this is a bit triggering. It's not very nice to think back to that time, I know. But the whole COVID piece did have a tiny bit of a silver lining for Business Connect, in that we ended up having a lot of businesses come through the platform in a short amount of time. So we were able to learn a lot from that. We stood up the service in about 2 weeks. And, by government standards, we were pretty pleased. We thought that's pretty fast. But it really showed the strength of Business Connect in the way that it stitched together government for businesses. So when a business would come to Business Connect, instead of having to think about what industry am I in and what activity am I undertaking, who do I need to talk to about that specific activity, which agency, and what's their process for me being able to get permission, they could come to one place, Business Connect, and then they could input their information and answer some questions. And the system would use logic to then route that request to the right place, to one of 17 different agencies. So that instead of someone applying and then the agency coming back and saying, oh, no, that's not us, and then that puts it back on the business to work out, okay, well, who is it then? Those things were happening behind the scenes. So an agency would receive the application into a work queue, and if it wasn't for them, they were then able to transfer that through to another agency or behind the scenes without bothering the business owner. So this plays into the point that I was making at the start around trying to provide a more coordinated interaction with government, is that we do that on their behalf. So we were able to give people, some categories were auto approved, so we were able to give people that instant reassurance that they would be able to cross an alert level boundary, and we got really, really good feedback from some pretty important stakeholders and businesses in New Zealand. So that was what we did there, and that really helped us showcase what we were able to provide to government and how we could help. Once we kind of got through that period and we were turning those COVID support services off, we tried to sort of shake that off and figure out what we were doing and pick things up again. And what we ended up finding was that when we really looked at the goals that we had, which are on the right there around, we wanted a high level of reusability. We wanted obviously to be able to scale. We wanted to build things sustainably, and we wanted to offer a great experience to our customers. The way that we were building forms at that time, it really wasn't going to deliver on really any of those goals. And it wasn't going to scale. And the reality was we weren't getting the level of reusability that we had hoped to get. As you can see by that kind of method of using a service design, prototyping, user testing, user stories, solutioning. I mean, it was quite long-winded and quite development heavy. So when we kind of looked at what that was resulting in, it was a funny time because we were searching around for what should we do next. We'd done these hospitality services. I was at that time in the engagement role in the team. So I moved into a product manager role a year ago, and I was the one that was out there trying to get councils to use the suite of services that we'd developed. And we were thinking, okay, what do we do next? And it was a real time where I felt like we were really searching for, what is the next opportunity. I remember we had some external help to look at prioritizing services. What other services across government could we bring on? We ended up targeting some agencies and thinking, okay, here would be a great group of services to bring on. And then we'd go to the agencies and they'd say, well, we're in the middle of a digital transformation, so not now. Or, they'd say, oh, well, the legislation is going to be changing at some point, so we don't want to do that now. So it was really like knocking your head against a brick wall. And when we also looked at the way we were working, it was really taking too long to bring on a new service. It was taking too much effort from the team. And we really couldn't work on more than one thing at once. And so, when you think about trying to scale the platform, I remember looking at an estimate of the number of kind of PDF forms across the New Zealand government. And I think I calculated that at our current rate at the time, it would have taken, I think, 70 years to put them all on the platform. So it was pretty obvious that this wasn't going to scale in the way that we needed it to. The other thing was that I felt quite worried that if something urgent came up, like COVID, that anything that we had planned, any roadmap that we might have, would just have to go out the window with the whole team then redeployed onto whatever that sort of urgent priority was. And, there was a real lack of demand for what we were doing. It was really tough to, people supported it theoretically, but when it came to actually using it, it was hard to kind of get people engaged. And then on the other side, around the customer experience, we had, at that time, post-COVID, only had done one round of accessibility testing, like independent testing on the platform. And we hadn't really done much user testing. It wasn't really part of how we worked. We had probably customized too much. So we'd really packed in quite a lot of features and done a lot of bespoke work in order to gain adoption. We controlled everything quite tightly, and we also ended up, as I said earlier, owning some of the services. And that ownership of that services was really time consuming and required a level of expertise from our team that was just not scalable, wasn't realistic to be able to extend out to other services. We couldn't play that role. And growth was tough. So we felt a little bit lost in that time. I can remember one of my colleagues describing it as the valley of despair, which sounds very negative, because in that time we were still having wins, we were still doing good work, but it did feel like we were looking for something. So we had a couple of new people come into the team, and one of them in particular was just like, why can't we do this faster? Why can't we create services more quickly? Why does it take so long, even for existing services like, say, alcohol licensing, to sort of onboard someone? Because in effect, they're pretty much just subscribing to something that exists, and yet it was taking 2 weeks to do that. So a simple service was taking us 2 weeks with a kind of full team. So that's like 8 developers, a couple of designers, some testers, etc. So, quite expensive. I mean, by government standards, and it was still cheap, but we knew it needed to be different. Tian Liu was supposed to be on this call with me today to present with me, and unfortunately he's unwell, but he sort of described it as, he told me about this experiment, which, apologies if this kind of is a little bit of animal cruelty, but these monkeys were in a lab. These guys put these monkeys in a lab, and they put some bananas up a pole. I hadn't heard of this, but you guys, some of you on this session may have heard this of this experiment. And the monkeys would try and get the bananas, but they would, the scientist guys would sort of spray them with water, and so they'd hop down, because obviously monkeys don't like water. And every time they did, they would get sprayed. And eventually they swapped one of the monkeys out. And when that monkey tried to go for the bananas, the other monkeys would pull that monkey down. And as they swapped monkeys out of the room and put different monkeys in, it ended up that all the monkeys in the room, none of them had been sprayed with water, but none of them were trying to get the bananas. And so when Tian was telling me this, I thought, oh my gosh, that is where we were. We had sort of put ourselves into a little box, and we had really narrowed the realms of what we thought was possible. And it actually just took someone going and grabbing the banana for us to kind of realize that we could do things differently. And so we really vividly remember the day in the office that it was the 20th of June last year, that one of our colleagues was like, I could build a form in like 2 days. And I remember our director saying, well, yeah, go do it then, go show us how do you do that. And so our tech lead, Aaron, contacted a friend of his in the UK and said, hey, can you just pull together this form for me? And then the next morning we came in and the form was in the director's inbox, because obviously drag and drop form building isn't anything new. But for us, it was the banana. We just hadn't thought to grab it. And basically from that day forward, we were like, we all wanted a banana. So that really, really changed things for us. And it set us on this kind of new path to going from being a service and providing the service and in some cases being the service owner and being the one responsible for deciding how the service should shape up to creating a product. So we really followed this thread and we supported our team to explore, okay, cool. If we were to try to make use of a drag and drop form builder, how would we integrate that into what we have now? And then the next step from that was, okay, if we look at all of the tasks associated with building and publishing a form, which of them can we take away from our developers? It's slow and it's costly. They do a great job, don't get me wrong, but in terms of creating an application form, it shouldn't be that way. It should be quicker, it should be cheaper. So and taking away those tasks from the developers and working on creating a BAU where non-technical people could have the ability to create and publish forms, we were solving our own problem. We discovered this problem. We finally realized that we had it and we were solving it, but we were inadvertently solving it for others in government as well. So we shifted from the service provider, digital service factory kind of mentality that we were in to something more like a product that could empower others. And it was out of that we actually created the product manager role that I moved into about a year ago. So then I read a book. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's pretty well known in the kind of product space. And it's, kind of a little old now. I mean, I think it was published 2020 or 2021. But anyhow, this was the book that I read. And for me, it was just an absolute game changer. I can remember while I was reading it or after I read it, one of the people on the team was like, what's happened to you? And I was like, it's this book. So I got quite carried away. But the one thing that I took out of that book that I still do now is customer interviews, which is, again, nothing groundbreaking. But for me, it kind of was. So I began talking to New Zealand businesses and I tried to talk to at least one a week. And it really began to shift our spotlight back onto this is who we're meant to be helping. It helped us learn about, new pain points, new needs, new opportunities, and how to have the most impact in terms of saving businesses time. Where do they feel like they're wasting time? What is taking up all of their time? So on the platform, we ask people who move through an application form if they'd like to give us feedback and if we could contact them. And that's where I began sourcing businesses to talk to for these interviews. So I've talked to business owners all over the country in a lot of different industries, and I absolutely love it. It's I kind of feel like it's like a window into the real world because working in government, obviously you can really get into your own bubble and have this kind of echo chamber thing happening. And so for me, once or twice every week, I just get this window open into the real world, where I end up talking to, the owner of a liquor store, or the owner of a bookshop in a small town, or whatever it might be. Someone who imports makeup, who actually owns a store right here in the town that I live in that I hadn't heard of. And what it did was it helped me hear about all of their problems that I wouldn't otherwise. So I remember talking to a guy who owned a campground, and he said, you want me to convert the documents I have to upload? You want me to convert the files in order to upload them? Because at that time we were restricting the file types. And he said that he said that's like asking an 80-year-old woman to jump into a Formula One car. He's like, it took me hours. I had to ask someone to help me. It was so, things like that. We talked to them about, wanting them to feel confident. They just want to do the right thing. They just want to know that they've got it done and they did it right. They want really good reminders. We have lots of instances in this country where businesses have their alcohol licenses expire because they just didn't have something set up, or they just didn't look at the thing on the wall and notice that it was coming up. They want to be able to reuse the information that they've already supplied to government. They want the whole thing online, not just little bits of it. They want, where they can get those instant approvals. They want them. They don't want the jargon. So we ended up kind of rallying around this shared goal out of that, all of that good stuff we were getting from businesses, that we wanted to be the fastest way to deliver great government digital services that businesses love. And creating this kind of sentence, it really helped focus us. It really took us in a direction that was more outcome driven. So we took that statement and we broke it into, we restructured our team. We created the outcomes to be the fastest way to deliver government services. We wanted more businesses on the platform, and we wanted a platform that businesses love. So we created squads around each of those outcomes. We gave each of those outcomes like a lead, a person who was owning them. It really, really helped us focus, and things started to fall into place. So prioritization came less about kind of the loudest voice, or trying to win over an agency to adopt the platform, and more about challenging, okay, how does that suggestion actually help us drive towards these goals that we've made for ourselves? As you can see here on the slide, we really importantly differentiated between our process for building a form and building a new feature. So our dev squads are really happily working away on the new features that we know will help businesses and will help government agencies. And we have a whole different team working on dragging and dropping those forms that we're trying to create. As I say, we broke into different squads. So before that, our team was one big giant blob. And when we actually broke the teams down and gave them their specific outcomes to drive towards, we saw an immediate shift in productivity, in speed, and the culture. So we were seeing much more ownership over the work. We were seeing that squads had fewer and shorter meetings. They were able to deepen their knowledge on their particular area rather than have to sort of be generally aware of everything going on across the team. And they were context switching a lot less, which is obviously a really inefficient way to work. So it's been, more high value features getting shipped, better problem solving, and a better understanding of why we are doing the work that we are doing. So this is kind of bringing me towards the end now. So this is the sweet spot that we reference in the title of the session. And that's kind of where we are right now. And it's a really great place to be, with a lot of potential in the future. So we have created a tool called FormBuilder.govt. It's based on an open source form building software, and it means that we can prototype forms in a couple of hours. It means that we don't need any developers to be involved, which is great, because previously, because of the cost of creating a service, we felt like we had to be very careful about the bets that we made. So if we chose a service to create, we had to be really sure that we were going to get it onto the platform, get it across the line. But now we can just make a whole bunch of smaller bets, and it's because it's so low cost, there's no risk there. And so what we see is we talk to agencies and councils, and we really quickly will just prototype the form for them and show them, hey, this is what you could have. This is fully funded. It's fully security certified. It's ticks all the privacy boxes. It's accessible out of the box. It's all there for you. Do you want it? We are designed to support single and cross agency services, and we're also now following our friends in the UK and Canada and other countries around. We want to get people from outside our team actually building their own forms. The team itself is really, really proud. We've got a really happy team. Everybody knows what they're meant to be doing, but the best thing is that people want this. So rather than kind of being the wallflower, we're now like the belle of the ball, if you will. So we've got lots of people emailing us, asking us questions, really interested from across government and what we're doing, and maybe making use of it. We're bringing more services onto the platform. And excitingly now, when we publish a service to the platform, parts of the team don't even know that's happening, which for me, having been there from the start, is quite mind-blowing. I know we published a service for the insolvency and trustee services, and the majority of the team weren't even aware of it. So it's been a real game changer for us. Another thing that has been amazing for us is, I mentioned earlier that we were at a point in time post-COVID where we realized we'd only done one round of accessibility testing on the platform and probably hadn't really prioritized many of the findings out of that. And for me personally, working on this, it had always been a bit of a point of shame around not feeling really proud that we were able to offer a truly accessible experience. And I remember thinking, I hope people don't ask about accessibility. And about sort of, I think it was March time, we did another round of testing. The report came back with some issues and blockers, and we've, over the last 6 months, invested really heavily in resolving all of those. So we're at the point now where we have a couple more things to do, and by the end of the year, we will be AA WCAG 2.1 compliant and already on our way to achieving 2.2, which the New Zealand government will be kind of bringing in as its standard early next year. And so what it means is that we're doing this on behalf of agencies and councils. We want to provide a gold standard in terms of accessible services so that they don't need to do that. We don't need every agency that's bringing a new service, making a new service digital, to have to go through all of that kind of testing and all of those kinds of things. Very recently, we started to talk to the Ministry of Disabled People here in New Zealand, Whaikaha, and we're really excited to partner with them to get their help to take things to the next level. So we're confident that we're a compliant government service now. We're a product where if you put a form on here, it will be compliant, but we want to go even further. And so we're going to be partnering with them to talk to people in the disability community and do some more testing. We've already done some, but I had a really proud moment, probably only 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I was with Tian and we were talking to the Ministry for Disabled People, and they asked for a demo of Business Connect, which we were happy to oblige. But at the last minute, one of the people said, if you could do the entire demo with the keyboard, please. And we'd never done that before. And I just looked at Tian and he was like, okay, I've got this. And he did the whole demo just using the keyboard. They were really impressed. And I was just like, I can just shake off the shame and be really proud of what we have now. So that was a really cool moment from my point of view. To finish off now, it feels like a chapter is kind of closing for us. And then when we look to the likes of Canada, UK, France, and we can see that path that they're taking. And it's going to be something that we'll be looking to follow on from. There's lots to do next year to make sure that this product really works for government people and widen things out to include individuals. There might be some opportunities there. At the moment, we've got our funding to be focused on businesses. But the way we work is already shifting. We're trying to bring people from outside the team in to use the tool and begin to get them signed up online. We'd love to have them have immediate access to the tool and the guidance and the support in the community. We'd love to have automated guardrails and checks that make sure that they're producing consistent results with the Form Builder. We would love to see a simple and efficient publishing workflow that would see those services then going out into the world, being published to a platform or being published maybe in a website or other people's platforms. We would love to have, our users have a really inclusive experience, and obviously those service teams to get really, really good data so that they can make great decisions that get good regulatory outcomes at the end. So yeah, 3 years since joining, I've become a real leader in this team and a driving force in the strategic direction of the product and the decisions being made. I feel really responsible for what we're doing, the customers, the product, and our team. And it's kind of new and scary, but really exciting nonetheless. And I hope you've got something out of this session. So really happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Shelley, for that awesome presentation. Super exciting to hear about your plans for scaling the work. And I particularly love the anecdote about you and Tian giving the demo with just the keyboard. That was a really awesome illustration of how far this work has come and how far you all have come in it. So reminder to folks to continue throwing your questions and for Shelley in the chat, and we'll surface them aloud. We've already had a couple come in. So I'm going to start with the first one that I heard from, or that I read from Ann Meeker, which Ann said that they would love to know how you recruit customers to interview.
Yeah, no problem. I know this is such a tricky one, isn't it? It can be really time consuming, the logistics of setting these up. So we started off by just reaching out to people literally in our network that we knew that owned businesses. So friends of friends and family and things like that. As I said in the session, when you hit submit on an application form, we will then ask you if you'd like to give us an NPS and rate the platform or the service you've had from 1 to 10. We ask for a comment, and then we ask if we can contact you for further information. We added that part in before we just had the NPS. And then I was like, what are we doing? We're missing a trick here. So we put it in, and when people tick it, I get a notification saying that someone's put some feedback in and that they want to be contacted. And then at the moment, I have a whole lot of templated emails that I send out asking for some time. I am honestly shocked by how generous business owners are with their time. I get about a 60% hit rate. So 60% of the people that supply feedback say they will be are happy to be contacted. And then, when I reach out, a lot of them give me 15 to 30 minutes. So when I started, I asked people just for a phone call. I wanted to try to find the most kind of lo-fi, easiest way so that there was no barrier to them sort of accepting or saying yes. So I did them by phone. More recently, we've started to introduce a question where are you happy to do it by Teams? And when we do them on Teams, we've started actually showing those customers some sort of designs and prototypes for things that we're thinking about implementing. So one of them is we're looking at how we can incorporate Te Reo Māori, which is our second official language, into the platform. And so we're kind of showing them what that looks like. I am aware, though, that, the people that say, yes, I can do Teams are obviously more digitally savvy, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to maybe get a skewed result, but better to get some feedback than none. But yeah, that's how we do it. It definitely does take time, though, to sort of go back and forth and find a time that suits and that sort of thing, but so worth it.
Yeah, awesome. It's cool to hear how engaged folks are, as well as how your approach has evolved over time. So we have another question here from James Moffat asking, is the Form Builder source code open? Can we fork it? And what's the underlying framework?
Sure. So FormBuilder is based on Form.io, which is open source Form Builder. So we're making use of the open source code via Form.io at the moment. We would like to create our own version of the Form Builder so that we can kind of gain more control over it. We can present a better UI that's more accessible. My dream is that the Form Builder itself is accessible. That isn't the case at the moment. And we want to make sure that we present kind of the feature set that we want government form builders to have access to. At the moment, if you're using Form.io, there's a lot of other stuff that you could begin playing with that we really don't want people to put into their forms. So that is kind of at the moment, that is the plan for next year. But what's good about using Form.io is that it allows us to kind of just test the concept, and we've just yesterday sent out a wider invitation to government people to come and sign on and use the form. So we're just testing that demand at the moment, but more than likely we'll be creating our own version next year. I apologize, James, I'm not the most technical person. So if one of my colleagues was here, they'd be able to answer more confidently, I'm sure.
Well, it sounds like we should stay tuned for developments on the source code front. Next question is from Caroline Jarrett, asking, how important is the chat with the businesses compared to the form builder aspects?
How is the chat with the businesses?
If we're not clear on that question, feel free to, if we need a clarification, maybe Caroline could add some clarifying points in the chat if we need.
I'm not too sure what she means by that. Do you mean the customer interviews versus, I'm not sure what that versus.
Well, Caroline, if you're still on, I invite you to clarify your question if we get a clarification. And Caroline says, yes, I mean the customer interviews.
Okay, how important are the customer interviews versus
compared to the form? So what are we, sorry, Caroline, we're doing great. Compared to what aspects, if you could help clarify, like Caroline says, are the interviews just as important as making the forms quickly?
Oh, I see. Sorry, Caroline. Yeah, I follow you now. I think they are. I think, they've really helped us to understand. They've basically helped us to understand we have this love squad, and that's Tian's squad actually, is the love squad. The love squad is there to make a platform that businesses love. So that the interviews have really informed his work in terms of how should the landing page work? What should the navigation be? Like what features can we introduce that are going to make life easier for customers? Our fast squad, which is one of my colleagues leads that one, has all been about how do we deliver government services faster? And so out of that squad has come the Form Builder tool. So that's how those two things play. They're both equally important, I think.
Awesome. And thanks for helping us clarify in the chat there, Caroline. Our next question is from Paula Laval. Do you anticipate duplicates with Form Builder? Are you still maintaining the quote stitching of various government agencies?
Do I anticipate duplicates? I'm not sure I understand the question, I'm afraid.
Paula, we invite you again to offer some clarification in the chat if you're still here. No worries. This is part of the process of translation from chat-based questions to live answers. So we're all doing great. But Paula, if you want to offer some clarification, we invite you to. She says, do you anticipate users building the same forms over and over again?
Oh, okay. That's an interesting one. I'm not too sure what we anticipate at this point. Where I think I see things going, and really this is something, that when we get the videos from the other sessions that are happening at the moment, it'll be really interesting to see what's happened in other countries. But I anticipate we'll get a lot of people using the tool, just trying it out. I'm not sure what proportion of those will want to publish a service through to the platform. It's going to be really interesting to see how government people end up using this tool. Whether they use it just for prototyping or whether they do indeed want to publish a service through. But the way that we've set it up is that we've created a template that follows a certain pattern. We're really interested in people who are using the tool that want to stray away from that pattern, and we'd like to talk to them about why. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure it has.
Yeah, great. And also want to invite folks to, Paula says yes, and feel free to also add follow-up questions as Shelley offers their answers.
I also wonder if, for an example of that would be like with councils, they all offer the same service. And so maybe, Paula, you were meaning, are they going to build, are you going to have like 68 versions of alcohol licensing on the platform? That may have been what you meant. And our plan there is that we want to have one tile. So the customer clicks on alcohol license. they'll go in and they'll be able to select their council, and then yes, it will point to that council's form. So we will have, say, 60 versions of it, but the customer won't see all of those, but they will end up being pointed to that version of the form. Our hope is that those forms will all look very similar, and that's what we'll be trying to encourage. But we are going to introduce a little bit more flexibility for different organizations with similar services. Yeah.
Awesome. Our next question is coming in from Lizzie Alvarado Ford, who says, "Thank you, Shelley. What is it like using and maintaining the form building tool? Is there anything you wish it did that it can't?"
Yes, there is something I wish it did. I wish that so we have a whole lot of resources and components that we've kind of pre-configured that you can drag into the forms. And my wish is that if you were to make an update or an improvement to one of those components, that it would populate through already created forms. So at the moment, it doesn't do that. So any form that you've created already won't enjoy the benefit of whatever enhancement that you've made to a specific, like say you improved the address field resource that, was a set kind of had some fields and some content and whatever and had a lookup in it. If you improved that, all the forms you'd already created, you have to manually swap it out. And so I really wish it was kind of backwards compatible in that, that stuff would just flow through. That would be my wish.
Awesome.
Otherwise, if you've got thousands of forms, that's a little bit of a conundrum.
Right. We have yet another question from, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's names, please forgive me, but from Lisette Lopez. Beyond the WCAG standards, how do you run user tests for accessibility?
Oh, this is a great question. We have a lot of room to grow here. So as I said, we're kind of working with the Ministry for Disabled People. So we've had actually some of their staff, low vision staff, run through the platform just last week and give us some feedback. We were so surprised by the feedback. We were just like, oh, wow, okay, there is still so much to do. So we're going to really hopefully be guided by them. They have pointed us to a company that may be able to support us. So I guess what I'd say is we really recognize this is a very specialist area, and we're all keen to learn, but we know we're not necessarily, we need some guidance on that. So yeah, that's our plan at this point. So I've reached back out to the Ministry for Disabled People to say, okay, cool, we've done that bit. What next? Can we talk to some of your network? How should we run this? But I do think we will use probably a third party to help us run those accessibility testing sessions.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And our next question from Jackie Wilkinson, who says, "I see on your website that the process to building the form, quote, starts with a workshop where our team and yours work together to select the most relevant templates and adapt them to your individual or existing content." And Jackie would love to hear more about the workshop syllabus that you use and the logistics. For example, is it remote? How big of a group of people is it, etc.?
Cool. We try not to have too big a group, so we try to keep it to the sort of subject matter experts from within the agency. So we also like to have someone who is like one of the doers. So someone who actually receives the application forms, processes them, really good to have there. What we try to establish with that workshop is we talk about the current state and the pain points that they're experiencing in the current state. So the way that they run it there, any pain for the service team and pain for the customer. And that helps our service designers kind of identify whether there's any opportunities to make things better. But what we do is we can do them in person. That's our preference, but it's possible to do them remotely. And what we do is we try to co-create the form like then and there. So because it's a drag and drop builder, we can begin creating the form and they can actually see it live real time and review it and make changes and things. And what we try to get to is that first draft prototype that they then take back to the business and kind of put it through its paces. And then we do one round of feedback and then we're kind of off and running.
Awesome. I love all of these nitty-gritty process-based questions. Y'all keep them coming. We know we have some form wonks in here. It's great. And we have another question from Caroline Jarrett who asks, how do you handle annual updates, meaning things where the legislation, amounts, or anything else change or get revised on an annual basis? Does everyone have to make a fresh form each year?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. I mean, my dream for this one is that we put the onus back on the service owner to make these changes. That's like really future state though. Like what I would want to see is someone understanding, okay, the legislation's changing or our fees are being reviewed. I need to jump back into the form builder, make a change and republish. But at the moment, our team does that. So we get these change requests come in. Some of our forms available on the platform are built the old way, so they're coded. And those ones we have to prioritize the change. We're getting them through. We've had a few this week where they want the list of document uploads at the end to change. And we have to write a user story and prioritize that into a sprint. And then get that developed. And that's the old way, but there are still some forms that are hanging around that we have to run like that. Now, when the change request comes in, we ask one of our 2 form builders to jump in, update the content, change the URL, update the amount, and then it's just republish it back into the production environment. So really quick and easy.
Awesome. Well, we still have 3 or 4 minutes left on the clock here, folks. If you have further questions for Shelly, take a moment to drop them into the chat. Caroline also shared as a follow-up a pro tip for running the quote start of the process workshops. Get them to bring a stack of the filled in paper forms, ideally fresh from the incoming post. It's much easier than getting the person who deals with the form to try to remember the range of issues that they encounter. Thanks, Caroline. Caroline also says, thanks for the explanation of the update process. Sounds like you're getting that streamlined too.
I hope so. Yeah, I really hope so. We've got a real challenge around the council space. I think it's more straightforward with agencies because they deliver a service, so they own it, and that's quite clear. But when it comes to councils and they all deliver an outdoor dining permit, and you have to try and work out how to do that on their behalf, we are hoping to partner with a local government body, and one of their staff members has committed to become kind of a council form builder. And my sincere hope is that that he will be able to basically become like an extension of our team, and any councils that want services built and they don't want to build them themselves, we can funnel those through to him. That's my dream. But yeah, we'll see how that pans out.
Awesome. I think we have one more question that just came in, and we'll take this as our last question before we take a moment to close out. Martha Pidcock asks, you mentioned you wanted to move away from Form.io. What features are you looking for? What are the technical limitations you're running into?
Yeah, it's kind of less about the technical limitations. It really delivers everything we need and probably more. We have had to do quite a lot of work in there around making the forms accessible. So we want the results to be accessible. And so, yeah, that has required some investment. Just using Form.io and producing a form, it's not necessarily as accessible as it needs to be for WCAG 2.1. So we have had to do a lot of investment there, but it's more about creating like an integrated product. So what I want to see is I want to see people from across government able to sign up for it online, get access to it, and it to be all in one place so that they can build the form and then publish the form, and it's all kind of within our realm of things, our product. At the moment, we have to have them sign up to Form.io. And then create the form, and then we publish it through to our test environment so they can have a look at it. But ultimately we want them to be able to create their whole service themselves. So even the work queue and the case management portal, the tile on the dashboard, we want them to do all of that. And so for us to make that happen, we kind of need to bring the form building part, the prototyping part, in with the service creation part and just make one product. We also, as I said, not all of the components or features in Form.io we've kind of worked on and made sure that they're accessible. Like a really good example is that in Form.io, there's a signing panel where you can draw a signature. And I remember when the team found it, they're like, oh, this is so cool. Let's put this into the service. And previous to that, we just had a declaration tick box. Anyway, I don't know how it got into anyway, it's in one of our services and it's not accessible. Like you can't do that with a keyboard. And it's actually unnecessary because the tick box is legally all you need. So that's an example of someone going, well, this is cool, and just putting something in that has these kind of knock-on effects. And so we would love to have the ability to kind of limit that down and make sure the stuff they have access to is the stuff that is definitely accessible and definitely necessary.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that closing question, Martha. Thanks for that closing answer, Shelley. And thank you all again for joining for today's session. Big thank you, Shelley, for sharing your time and expertise with us today, very early in your day.